run to the bathroom real quick.
Hey, what's up, everybody? Pura vida. You guys ain't gonna believe it. I was just giving a speech on mute. But thanks for tuning in. We got another Kurimeo meditations. We got a good brother today, Shad. He actually, reached out to me and said, "Hey, I want to be able to go on and share my family's history and what I know and how it corroborates with the learning we've been doing, our journey here on this channel, in this community. So you guys can hear it from somebody from the actual tribe, actually involved, not just me reading books and stuff like that. All right, so welcome. Thanks for tuning in. Peace to everybody in the chat. Much love to everybody that supports, all my Patreons. One love, pura vida, pura vida. Hope you guys enjoyed that little tune in the beginning, just to get the vibes going. Yeah. Hey, Shad, can you hear us?
Yep, I can hear you.
Hey, man, welcome. Yeah, yeah, I was letting everybody know how you reached out, and I'm grateful that you did. I was willing to go ahead and share things like this with everybody, so they can see that it's real things, it's real history, it's real genealogy. It's
Right.
nobody doing self-hate. It's not nobody trying to not be, you know, because a lot of people think that you just try not to be so-called black, and it's they don't understand. This is a bloodline thing. This is family. This is real record. So let them know who you are, man, where you come from, what tribes you represent. Let the people know.
All right. So well, first of all, I want to say, um, Wihina Khan, the Tasuis, Rashad, Napion Wachi, Lashantaquak. Um, Good night. My name is Rashad. I'm from Mashantucket. Um, People know me as Shad, or my name online is Air Shad. Um, I'm from the Mashantucket Pequot tribe in southern New England, in the lower east corner of Connecticut. I was born in Rhode Island. My parents were born in Rhode Island, and they lived in Narragansett territory until the early 90s when they moved to Connecticut. Yeah, I just wanted to come on here and give my side of the story. I appreciate Kurimeo for letting me come on. I really appreciate it. Uh,
Yeah, no
right.
problem, man.
Oh yeah, appreciate it. And I work in the cultural resource department for my tribe. Um, right now we're in a language program, so I'm involved in the language program. We're trying to get people speaking again. But I just wanted to come on and give my perspective on some of the things. I know Kurimeo, he's in so deep in some of the stuff, and it's crazy. And I wanted to come on and talk as someone who listens to his things, but also I live it every day. So I live in the community. I'm around my cousins every day. So I wanted to come out here and just give my side.
Awesome, man. And I appreciate you doing that, reaching out, and I'm glad to have you on. All right. And if you like to go ahead and share your screen or anything, just let me know.
Yeah. Yep.
All right.
All
Let me
right.
stop sharing.
Yes. Let me I'm gonna undo my video here. Share my screen so you guys can see me. But let me see. Where's the
Much love and respect to everybody tuned in. Appreciate it, Susan.
So first, let me go here. So this is my tribe's website here, the official website. We're the Mashantucket, the Western Pequots. And I wanted to give a little bit of history before I went into anything. There's a reason that there's Western and Eastern Pequots, and it goes all the way back to 1637. In 1637, the Pequot were um, throughout all of southeastern Connecticut. So I'm going to show this little map here. So I got this map. Let me make this a full screen thing here. Okay. So this map isn't perfect. I don't actually know who made this map, but this Pequot Mohegan area here actually went all the way over to the Connecticut River. So the Pequot were in control of basically this whole area of Connecticut here. Now, English English scholars in English history would have you believe that, when they talk about New England, they're talking about everything that was present day New England. But actually, the Dutch controlled just about all of Connecticut at the time, except for where the Pequot were. So the Dutch had a lot of control over here.
Mm,
And the Pequot, so my tribe here, the Pequot, were in this area. And up until 1637, the English were trying to get a foothold in Connecticut, because they were trying to displace the Dutch from the area, because the Dutch had a lot of resources being on the Connecticut River and the Thames River, this is a very fertile area. There's a lot of tobacco. People don't know there's a lot of tobacco grown in Connecticut because the soil from the Connecticut River overflowing many times throughout history, and the soil is perfect for crops and agriculture and things like that. So
yeah.
the English were trying to get in on that, and the English had lost every engagement against the Pequot until what they call the Pequot War of 1637, which was really a Pequot massacre. And
Hmm.
it took place in Mystic, so this red dot here, which is where the principal fort was of our people. And it was a fort full of women and children, a few men, but a lot of men were out because they had heard things about, the English moving in on them. And they killed anywhere from 300 to 700 Pequots in one battle, basically. And that took our foothold in Connecticut out, and we were after that war taken as slaves to Providence Island, Nicaragua, Bermuda, and the West Indies. So our people were taken as
Hmm.
slaves
Yeah.
after that point, basically. And we were also given to the Mohegan tribe and the Narragansett tribe as slaves.
Mm,
So the Mohegan tribe, this is actually is a pretty deep history.
yeah.
I'm gonna surface level thing about it though. The Mohegans are actually Pequot. So it wasn't until the English came here that the Mohegan became their own tribe. There is another tribe over here on the Hudson River in this area, and they're called the Mahican. Mahican. They're completely different than the Mohegan. So I just want to clear that up. And the book, Last of the Mohicans, they mix the history of the Mohegan and the Mahican. So it's not really a good historical narrative. Um,
Okay. So like in that movie, Last of the Mohegans, are they mainly talking about the Pequot Mohegan?
no, they're talking about the Hudson River Mohegans,
Okay.
but the person who's called Uncas in that, he's the chief. He
Uh-huh.
was the chief of the Mohegans here in
Okay.
Connecticut. Yeah. So there were two chiefs at the time. Sassacus was the chief of the Pequot, and his cousin Uncas. Um, they both were up to be the sachem. They both had the bloodline to be the sachem, but the people chose Sassacus to be the sachem. And Uncas was upset about that because he felt like he had the right to be the sachem. So he tried many times to basically overthrow Sassacus and become the chief sachem. And he would get kicked out to Narragansett because his grandmother was Narragansett. That's another thing I want to touch on. Many of these peoples in southern New England were all related. So when you see these borderlines and things like that, I
Yeah.
don't believe it was like that before
Yeah.
colonization, because
Yeah.
everybody was mixed. There were a lot of bloodlines mixing. So Uncas's grandmother was Narragansett, and he was repeatedly kicked into Narragansett and then let back in, and kicked into Narragansett and let back in because he kept trying to overthrow his cousin
Yeah.
Sassacus.
Yeah.
Um,
What I would say that that kind of they did that a lot of the times for tribal relations, like,
Right.
give, the princess to the chief of the other tribe, and, they have a family, and then so that guarantees, at least a couple years of some relationship. But yeah, that's interesting. Sorry, keep going.
No, that's all right. So when the English got involved, um, they were involved with the Dutch. Things were involved with the Dutch, and this is how I see it. I think that many of the colonists, at least in our area, they were more worried about the other people who were there. So the English and the Dutch were fighting, and we were kind of in the way, basically. That's how I see it.
Yeah.
So
So when you yeah, just to get a better perspective, when we're saying, Dutch and English, it's we would have to look at individually when we're talking about who are exactly what Dutch, what English,
yeah, yep,
to know, because based on the studies, it could be Huguenots, we can be talking about many Protestants,
exactly, exactly.
crypto Jews, crypto Muslims. So it's just to remind the people hearing right now in the chat, just don't assume white. When you hear that, don't just assume white.
And we actually know that many of the English who were um, in Plymouth and then in Rhode Island, they were a lot of them were Protestant. So a lot of the Protestants went to Rhode Island with Roger Williams because
Yep.
he was open about freedom of religion. So it was a place where a lot of those Protestants could go to at the time.
Yeah. So I mean, you said it earlier that how fertile it was and everything, and we talked about it earlier how because I grew up in Massachusetts and Boston, so and how beautiful it is at times. How especially in the summer times and how things really grow. You can grow a lot of things there. We have the four seasons like you were saying, and how when they came, these Puritans or pilgrims, remember they're taking a pilgrimage. When people take a pilgrimage, that means they're going to a holy land, a holy place, something spiritual to them. So they knew when they got here, where they were coming. They wrote their New Atlantis. They knew, they wrote they were coming to see the sons of Abraham. As they said it in his new Francis Bacon in his book. But yeah.
And actually, people don't know that Rhode Island, the official name of Rhode Island is Rhode Island and Providence Plantations. So,
Hmm.
and the Providence came from God's providence because it was
Yes.
supposed to be given to them by God. So, that's the full name of the state.
Yes. Exactly. And you were mentioning the slavery part. Would you like to go more into that? Like, do you want to show the source? Like, just
Yeah, yeah. Let me go. I'll show the source of that.
if not, I got one open just in case.
Okay, I think I got it in here. Okay, here we go. So this is the source that I have, and it's called "To Do Some Good Upon Their Countrymen: The Paradox of Indian Slavery in Early Anglo-America" by Michael Guasco, Davidson College. So this is just I think this is the first page, but this is all we need to go to. So I can't highlight this, unfortunately, because it's on JSTOR. But I'm going to start reading from this portion right here. So hundreds of captives had been taken by the English Puritans as a result, English Puritans, mind you, Puritans, as a result of the colonists' triumphs in the battle at Mystic and the Great Swamp. So Mystic was the fort I was telling you about, the Pequot Fort. Subsequently, many Pequot men were put to death, while others were divided among the soldiers, given to the Narragansetts, or assigned to the Connecticut or Massachusetts colonies. The 17 women and boys, however, were placed on board the Salem-built craft of Captain Pierce and earmarked for sale in the remote Atlantic island of Bermuda. For some reason, Captain Pierce missed his landing and continued to the West Indies. Once there, Pierce deposited his cargo on the tiny Puritan outpost off the coast of Nicaragua at Providence Island, where by a stroke of the Providence Island Company's pen, the rebel Pequots were transformed into cannibal Negroes, condemned to serve out their lives in slavery in Anglo-America's first true slave society.
Mm, yeah,
So there's
that's
a
deep
lot of
right there.
interesting stuff in there, for sure.
Yeah, so I like to just corroborate with that, if you don't mind, just real quick.
Hmm.
All right. Let's see. Okay. So I got in case people haven't been able to. Okay, I'm sorry. Okay, if people haven't seen the video, you guys can check this one out for like a full breakdown. And what else? After they got to the Providence Island, where exactly that is, nobody really. Uh, this wasn't taught in school. They literally like we're saying something big here. Like the brothers sharing something big here, guys. Like they were sending Pequot Indians. They were so rebellious. They were really hating on them because they were so. They just kind of get tired of them, and they were trying to put them into slavery. And even in all the places they send them to the islands, they were still being rebellious there. They couldn't just. So they really didn't like them. They were labeling them cannibal Negroes. Like this is written in letters from the 1600s, like labeling these Indians from New England. Uh, Part of the book, let me see. This is Notes on History of Slavery in Massachusetts by George Moore. And it says this single cargo of women, this is after they got enslaved, right? The Pequots into the Bermuda. Says a single cargo of women children was probably not the only one sent for the company of Providence Island, replying from London in 1638, July 3rd, to letters from the authorities in the island direct special care to be taken of the cannibal Negroes brought from New England. All right. And you guys can see this was definitely in reference to the Pequot Indians. All right. And do you have the link of how they were being described in another source, the New
Yep,
England
I
Indians?
do.
All right, let me
Yep.
stop. All right,
Let me pull
okay.
that one up. Um, right. So where did it go? Um, all right. So here it is. So here's the book that this is from, Historical Collections of the Indians
Uh,
in
it's
New
not.
England.
Okay, yeah, there you go.
Oh, is it not showing?
Let me see. Yeah, it's showing now. Sorry.
Okay. So this is the book. I just want to show the back page of the book. This is in a library here in Connecticut, but this is
Okay.
inside the book here. So as you can see here,
You can
right
click
here.
on that. Click on the yeah.
Let me get
There you
there.
go.
There we go. All right. So here's the book, Historical Collections of the Indians of New England by Daniel Gookin. Okay. The color of their skins, the form and shape of their bodies, hair, and eyes demonstrate this. Their skins are of a tawny color, not unlike the tawny Moors in Africa. Okay.
Mm,
So, as we know, or some of us know, tawny now means like a very light tan color, but in the past, tawny was actually a very dark brown. So to continue on that, I wanted to bring up a primary source from our area that many people are not aware of, and this is actually housed in the Rhode Island School of Design. It's a portrait of Ninigret II. Ninigret II was a Niantic chief, and the Niantic were a small tribe that were in between the Narragansett and Pequot. Um, so these people, the colonists, they have exclaimed that they couldn't tell the difference between the tribes in New England. They had to ask an Indian, who's this? What tribe is he from? Who's this? What tribe is he from? Because we all looked similar. So this primary source is will show you what, give you a general idea of what other tribes in our area look like. So this is the image here, and this is from the Rhode Island School of Design Museum. You can look this up yourself, and it is a Native American sachem circa 1700. They're actually not sure the actual date that it was created, but this is supposed to be Ninigret II, and some scholars actually believe it to be Robin Cassasinnamon, who was a Pequot chief who got our land back in 1666 for our reservation. Um,
okay.
so this image right here obviously gives you a good
Yeah.
idea of what somebody looked like here, and it's a primary source. So we don't have many of these for our area. Um, I did wanna just show our museum. Even so, so here's the thing that some people don't understand. Not everybody in my tribe is aware of a lot of these things. You know, everybody's not aware of this stuff. Um, so our museum, we have a museum on our reservation, and this image here has been said to be Ninigret or Robin Casa Cinnamon. And in our museum, this is what we have Robin Casa Cinnamon uh, depicted
Mm,
as.
yeah,
So,
a lot
you know,
different.
but even on the information plate, which you can't see down here, they have this picture on the information plate. So, you know, I don't know if that was subliminal or if somebody knew and they wanted to put the picture of him there so people could compare. But this is what they have Robin Casa Cinnamon looking like in our museum. So I just thought that that was interesting because this is the primary source we have.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah, I've seen that image on the internet. Yeah.
yeah. So let me stop sharing here. All right. Let me look through my stuff because
Yeah. Just let me know when you need to share again. No problem.
okay, yeah. Um, what we got next here? So I did want to talk a little bit about um some of our stories that we have around here because unfortunately we were very early in contact. You know, our people were displaced in 1637. We got our reservation in 1666. It's been the oldest continuously occupied reservation given by um, the United States or the English at the time um, in the United States. But we lost a lot of our stuff. Our language was lost. We're getting it back. Um,
Okay.
our stories have been lost. But I wanted to talk about a story in particular, which is the story of the Great Snake. And the Great Snake, or Kachiskook, which means Great Snake, Kachiskook, is a story about a sea serpent. Okay. And if you've watched Kuremeo's videos or other people's videos, you'll know what a serpent, you know, giant serpents are, you know, basically dragons or what we know of. Um, and my ancestors had a lot of stories about them. So the great snake was a serpent that had horns. It was a horned serpent, and it had a copper plate on the middle of its head. And it
Mm,
was said if you ever encountered one, um, you could be given great power by encountering a great snake.
wow.
Yeah. And the other half of the story is there are these beings called the Thunderers, and they are what is depicted in our area as Thunderbirds. So there are Thunderbird basket designs. There have been hammered copper Thunderbirds found, Thunderbird pendants, and Thunderbirds are called Patakwahanak in our language, Patakwahanak, and they are said to be at odds with the great snake, and they throw thunderbolts at the great snake and try to
Mm,
hit the copper plate on the great snake's head because it will kill it. So they when a thunderstorm comes, it said that there's a great snake nearby, and the thunderers are trying to kill the great snake as they're going by.
mm. That kind of
Um,
reminds me of the symbolism of the dragon always fighting the phoenix or the eagle. Same story.
right.
Yeah.
So going into that a little bit, I'm gonna share my screen real quick.
All right.
So, right. So there is a war club actually. Let me see where I got it at. Okay, so there's a war club found in Massachusetts or Connecticut around these years, 1620 and 1680. So this war club, let me pull up a different picture. On the handle here, this is actually a depiction of the horned serpent. So it was also called the underwater panther or the great serpent, horned serpent.
Mm,
And
mm,
this is what's on the handle here of this war club. You can see, I think the horns were worn down a little bit, but there were shell beads inside of the eyes. And I'll get into the shells a little bit later because shells are really important in our culture here. But this war club not only has the underwater panther here, it's got a few other interesting inscriptions on it. One of a warrior, looks like he has a mohawk. That was a mohawk is a hairstyle that was worn by northeastern Indians, and it ended up coming from the Mohawk themselves. And Mohawk itself is actually a New England Algonquin word, and it means flesh eaters or body eaters. And
mm.
that's this goes into some modern day stuff where it's seen as derogatory for them. Um, but I'll get into that in a little bit because our people, the Algonquins of New England, have been at odds with, not in modern times, but pre-contact, we're at odds with the Mohawk, at constantly at war with
Yeah.
them. So
I do want to add it's interesting because I know a lot of the Siouan tribes kind of labeled them even before Europeans were labeling anybody cannibals. They were saying that, you know, some of the chiefs were kind of eating their enemies and stuff, the Iroquois side, you know, and so it does kind of like match what I've heard with the Siouan.
like, yep, there's a little bit more to it too. There are accounts of Algonquin people after a battle eating part of their
Hmm.
enemies
Yeah.
as well. I think that's probably all over America,
Hmm.
but I think historically the Mohawk were feared,
Yeah.
and Roger Williams actually writes this in one of his books, that the Algonquins were scared because the Mohawks would come out and they would literally have their war cry, and it would be, "We're going to eat you." And then
Hmm.
they would, when they killed people, they would almost roast their entire body.
Yeah.
From some of the accounts I've read, now this is historical. I
Yeah.
want to have people remember this is historical. The Mohawk and the Iroquois today obviously don't do any of that. But this is what our tribes have passed down historically from what these other
Yeah.
tribes we were at odds with used to do.
Yeah.
But this war club also has this picture on it, which I thought was really interesting.
Wow, look
So
at that.
this is described as being a snapping turtle,
Snapping turtles.
um, a snapping turtle. So we were talking about this. Me and Kurimeo were talking about this a little bit earlier, and from what I've seen, the art that I've seen my ancestors make, when they make something, you can tell what it is. And this doesn't look like a snapping turtle to me. It looks like a stegosaurus, to be honest with you. It's got the ridged back, big long neck and long tail. So maybe it is a snapping turtle, but um I don't think so.
Could be that's Leviathan, right? Like in the water.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yep, yep. So this was an interesting thing. I just wanted to share
Yeah,
share
that
that.
I don't think that's a turtle either.
Yeah. Um, so let me go. So I did want to show, I'm kind of jumping all over the place. My mind is a little
No worries. It's
mixed
all
up,
good.
but I did want to show, I forgot to do this. So where are we at here? Okay. So this is our tribal council. This is all our public stuff. So this is our tribal council currently, so you can see what some of the people look like. And I wanted to dive into this a little bit. So this is my cousin Rodney. This is my first cousin Latoya, my cousin Matthew, my first cousin Marvin,
Okay.
my cousin Crystal, and my cousin Danny. and my cousin Michelle. So you can just get an idea of what our council looks like. Now, what I did want to say was there are a lot of people out there who are, maybe just getting into this, figuring out their genealogy, knowing who they are. Um,
Yeah.
as you can see, our council is full of people who look completely different from one another. But I know from their genealogy, all these people are Pequot. So
Yeah.
when you're trying to make generalizations about what somebody looks like and whether or not they're an Indian or whether or not they're Aboriginal, we're in 2022. There, in 2 generations, you can go from being one shade to the completely opposite shade, and you still have the lineage or genealogy. So I just wanted to point that out
Yeah.
that
Those are
um,
facts.
yeah, you
Yep.
can't really tell what somebody is by looking at them nowadays, and you probably couldn't do it back 1,000 years ago either, because there was a lot of mixing.
Yeah. Yeah, we got to get past like just the physical part, and I'm glad you mentioned that, and I'm glad you said these are all your cousins because you guys can like, you can see like yes, they all look different than each other. So
Yeah, that's how it is on the reservation. Everybody I see is literally my cousin. So they could be my eighth cousin, they could be my first cousin, but they're all related to me in some way. So
okay,
um let's see. Okay. I also wanted to point out something because there's a video that's been going around online, and I don't think people have the context of the video. So as you can see, this was a newspaper article written about my tribe. When we have a casino on our reservation, like many tribes have casinos on their reservation.
yeah,
So the title of this is Black Indians Hit Jackpot in Casino Bonanza. Okay. And these are all my cousins here again. But what I wanted to point out was in this portion here. So in fact, the Pequots have made so much money, they've gotten the attention of previously untouchable casino mogul Donald Trump, who they say angrily refers to them as Michael Jordan Indians.
mm,
And if you know the video I'm talking about, it is a
yeah,
video in, I believe, Congress where Donald Trump says they don't look like Indians to me and they don't look like Indians to Indians.
yeah,
So people were thinking that that had to do with a lighter skin tone people, but
yeah,
it had to do with us
yeah,
because a lot of tribes, believe it or not, are can sometimes be prejudiced against different looking people.
yeah,
Um, And I think that comes down to, Hollywood and mainstream media, they portray tribes which are on the Great Plains, which there are tribes on the Great Plains that look like that, but there are different people all over America, indigenous people. So we don't all look the same.
yeah.
Uh,
So I'm glad you cleared that up because people do assume Trump was talking about a different look, a different type
right,
of so-called Indian,
right.
and yeah. So I'm glad you pointed that out.
Yeah. Um, so in this same theme here with our casino, we're not I don't want to say we're not, but I think that states in general have not issues, but their relations with tribes aren't always good. And one of the things I wanted to talk about as well was at our capital in Hartford. To this day, they have this on their Capitol building. So it's a attack on an Indian fort, and you can see what look like Europeans and what look like natives here. And this is actually a depiction of the Pequot War of 1637. So this is a depiction of when, 700 of my people were slaughtered and given away as slaves. And this is still to this day on the Capitol building um, in Hartford, Connecticut. So
Okay.
um, I just wanted to point it out as this is something that is still, our people are still being
Yeah.
treated this way.
Yeah.
Have something like this on a building.
Yeah.
All right. And let me see here. What else did I want to show? Before I talk about, because I'm going to talk a little bit about genealogy, my genealogy in general, and then where some of my cousins come from and what we're mixed with, because we are mixed with different things. But first, I want to show a little bit about Narragansett. So Narragansett, um, all of um, my parents are both Narragansett, so I have a lot
Okay.
of Narragansett in me as well. So human burial site um, found at Salt Pond. So this passage here is talking about Rhode Island Site 110, and it's also called Point Judith Pond. And I'm going to show you where Point Judith is on a map in a second. But prior to finding this site here, archaeologists had believed that New England Indians were strictly hunter-gatherers and that we didn't grow much or any corn at all. But after finding this site, they found so many corn kernels
Yeah.
at this site that was dated to 11 to 1300 AD that
Okay.
they had to, change their stance on um, my ancestors in this area. So I want to show where Point Judith is. So I have a little map here. So this is Connecticut here. This is Rhode Island. As you can see, Providence here.
Yeah.
Um, so Point Judith Pond is on the southern end here. And the site is right under I-95, or this is Route 1, I'm sorry, Route 1 here, which connects to I-95 eventually.
Mm-hmm.
So the site was right here, and now this is a yacht club
Wow.
right on top of the site that is the oldest site in Rhode Island. They
Mm.
built a yacht club right on top of it.
How convenient.
Yep, how convenient, right? So this is the area where the Narragansett say that they come from. There's actually an account that Roger Williams has, and Roger Williams was the Puritan founder of Providence, Rhode Island. And he was good friends with the chief of the Narragansetts at the time. And the chief brought him to this spot and pointed at an island in this pond and said, "This is exactly where my people sprang out of the earth."
Wow.
And so it was right here where
That's
he
deep.
brought and said that. So Roger Williams and the chief were standing right at this spot. So this is where the Narragansett people originate. And actually, Wakefield, Rhode Island is right here. Wakefield and Peacedale. This whole area right here is full of Narragansett still to this day. So
Mm.
the reservation is a little bit further this way, but there is a heavy population of Narragansetts living in this area still to this day.
Okay. And when you say Narragansetts, that would include, so people can get that would include a lot of people that would be labeled people of color, so-called African American, so-called black.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. So yeah, let me clarify that too. So I'm gonna go back to this picture here and what my relatives here look like. Pequots and Narragansetts are very closely related. Um, like I said before, Uncas, who was the chief of the Mohegan, he was cousins with Sassacus, who was the chief of the Pequots, and their grandmother was Narragansett. So all of these people were very close, and to this day we're very close, and we look, very similar. You can go to Narragansett and see people that look just just like these people here, okay, or just like these people here, without any um, so-called admixture of slaves, if that's what you want to say. I'm not saying that there aren't slaves in some of our, or slaves, or people who were indentured or Africans in our genealogy, but the large majority of our genealogy does not seem to contain African people from Africa in general, and that's just a fact about our genealogy. Um, and people can definitely debate me. I have my genealogy that goes all the way back to about 1630, on one or two lines actually. So, and there's nothing in that line that would lead me to believe that somebody from Africa was in my line.
Now, would you say any foreign mixture, right? Like, would you say is more Iberian and or like Celtic or you know?
Yeah, so actually there is. So let me talk a little bit about my let me just put something else up on the screen while we're talking about the let me see, I'll just put this up here. So my genealogy, and you might actually know some of the names that I'll say because I know you're deep in the genealogy, and you're probably better than me because I haven't done the genealogy myself, but my family has done our genealogy, so that's how I know where I come from. But um, my mother is Pequot and Narragansett. My father is Narragansett Wampanoag, and my father's mother is Portuguese, German, and French. Um, so on my mom's side, my mom's mom is Narragansett, and her last name, her maiden name is um, Hazard. So she's from the Hazard line, and her mother's maiden name is Fry. So she's from the Fry line. And there are many Hazards and Fries in Narragansett, and there are many Hazards and Fries in general. But my mother's father is Pequot, and he's also Narragansett. So um, my grandfather's father, his last name was Sebastian, and I'm going to get into Sebastian a little bit. There are a lot of Sebastians on both the Eastern and Western Pequot tribes in both of them. And his mother was a Fairweather, so she's a Fairweather, Fairweather Peckham. So those two last names are Narragansett centric last names. On my dad's side, his father, his last name was Young, so my last name is Young, but um, that last name Young was actually an adopted last name. My dad's grandfather took on the name of his stepfather, Young, but really his last name was Hazard Reels. He was a Hazard Reels, and there are a lot of reels on both the Pequot and Narragansett, in both the Pequot and Narragansett tribes right now. And his mother, so my dad's great grandmother, is a Walmsley. So Walmsleys are a big name throughout New England, and specifically in Narragansett, in Wampanoag. Um, Walmsleys actually go back to Massasoit, who was the chief of the Wampanoag at the time, the 1619, when the Pilgrims came here.
Mm,
So
yeah.
his daughter is the only one who survived from that time, from his line, and they ended up becoming Walmsleys at some point. So that's the line that my father comes from.
Wow.
Now, I wanted to talk about the Sebastian a little bit because Sebastian's not a native last name. It's actually a Portuguese last name.
Okay.
So there were two Sebastians who married um, native women, Pequot, I believe Pequot women, and created the Sebastian lines, but they were both Portuguese. Now, I didn't know much, I didn't think much about it until I started researching, coming across videos like Kurimeo's channel and others, that those Portuguese quite possibly could have been Sephardic or Moors in general.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, definitely. When talking about time frames and as we get specific, most of these people, and especially 1700s, were Moorish Sephardic Jews. The Portuguese were the ones, these navigators, these captains, these pirates, merchants. That was the Portuguese, yeah, Iberians. And we were talking about earlier, and that's why I was asking you if you were Cape Verdean, you know, and because you get, I mean, I grew up in Boston, so like That's why I was asking you. You looked a little Cape Verdean to me. Do you
Right.
have Cape Verdean people in the tribes? In the
We have some people who are mixed with Cape Verdean. Actually, my uncle's kids are Cape Verdean. His wife is Cape Verdean, but then there's also a few families that are traditionally Cape Verdean. So they intermixed earlier at an earlier date, obviously, than our modern time. And there's some Cape Verdean there. And it's funny you say that because like I can go just about anywhere. Like I went to the Dominican Republic a few years ago. Somebody came up to me and started speaking to me in Spanish because he thought I was Dominican. Like
yeah,
you're saying you think I'm Cape Verdean. There are people in Bermuda who come to our powwow every year because they know their lineage, and a lot of them look like they're Cape Verdean or they're from this area. So I don't think that's not for a reason. I think there's a reason why all these people look the same because um, I know in our area, our people were sent just about everywhere, to Cape Verde, to
yeah,
Bermuda, to the West Indies, to
yep.
South America. So
Yeah, that's a for fact. A lot of the Portuguese, as we were saying earlier, did come. They learned the whaling from the American Indians. They American Indians, a lot of them went voluntarily. A lot of them went through indentures and whaling, and it became a big part. One of the main stops was Cape Verde. Cape Verdeans were going back and forth, and again, also Hispaniola and all these places. Yeah, they were same people were being brought over there back and forth, like we were saying earlier. A lot of the Pequots, a lot of the New England tribal people were being sent to Hispaniola. So yeah, there is a lot of when people say, yeah, a lot of Cape Verdeans do look Dominican and vice versa, because a lot of the time it goes back ancestrally to the same people. Just because they're coming out of there is off the coast of, you got to understand the whole history. Who colonized Cape Verde Islands, and who was in Hispaniola? What kind of so-called Negroes, as they were calling them, where were they really coming from? What was the origin port? And in this case, we mentioned earlier, and for Bermuda and Providence Island, they were calling Pequots Negroes. So you always gotta reconsider what it was told to you in history in class, and really question everything.
right, and I'll pull that back up actually, because you just said that. So, oops, that's the wrong one. So right here, cannibal Negroes is what they were called when they got to the island. So, they weren't Pequot anymore. They were Negroes. So from that point on, when were classified, they were Negro.
Yep.
Luckily we have some of the records, so we know that um, who some of their descendants are. Like we have people from Bermuda who know their genealogy, and they know that they were Pequot and they were brought to Bermuda as slaves. And to this day, they still know their lineage, and they come to our powwow every year. So,
Yeah, that's deep. So a lot of the times, when people are seeing whales or anything like that, when they see the word Negroes, don't assume, what they told us in school, like it's a white master and it's somebody from Africa, or just that's actually a white person that's owning them. Again, and a lot of those people in the whales are Indians, and a lot of the people the whale is for is colored folks too. They're just being labeled free white. And you guys got to understand that free white, included Moors, Iberian people. It was a lot of times status.
right, so let me switch up a little bit. Um, I want to talk about something that people probably don't know. Um, so here in southern New England, we speak in Algonquin. We're in our Algonquin languages. I mean, Algonquin tribes. We all speak Algonquin, different dialects of Algonquin. But one thing that I think is important for people to know, specifically about southern New England, and this is just me sharing my culture and my history with people, is that our language is actually um, a subgroup of Eastern Algonquin, which is a subgroup of the larger Algonquin language in general. So our language is pretty much different than a lot of other Algonquin languages outside of
Mm.
New England. Like it's different than the Chippewa, it's different than Ojibwe, it's different than Mi'kmaq, Lenape. There are obviously similarities because they're all Algonquin, but it's very different than those.
And
And go ahead.
I was gonna ask, why do you think that that's the reason? Why do you
Okay,
think?
so that's what I'm getting into. So the reason that is because before contact, and this is the best picture I could find, um, but before contact, the Iroquoian tribes, the northern Iroquoian tribes, so the Mohawk, Oneida, Onondaga, Cayuga, Seneca, they were actually cutting off southern New England from on the north. So this area here, let me put this on slideshow. So this area up here was actually um, Iroquoian pre-contact, and the area down here of the Hudson River was Iroquoian pre-contact, and that had cut off southern New England for an unknown period of time. Obviously, we don't know how long it was,
Okay,
but our language evolved independently of some of these other Algonquin tribes, and it was said by the Dutch in the 1500s, early 1500s, um, the Algonquin tribes in southern New England had been able to push back the Iroquoian tribes into their current places in the Great Lakes.
okay,
So for a period of time, we were cut off from all other Algonquin tribes.
wow.
And I wanted to ask you, Kurimeo, um, because I asked you this before. It was a while ago. It was on your what video was it? It was on your of the Chaldees video.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was, or it was on a Flavius Josephus video.
Okay.
Um, you were talking about the Seneca, and I wanted to know because you said something about Iroquois and maybe them having a relationship with, ancient Rome or something like that. And I was like, I was like fiending for that information back then, but um, it'll come out when it comes out. But I wanted to ask you about it if you could talk about that a little bit now, or if you got something coming for that in the future.
Yeah, actually, definitely something I've been kind of like running into when
Mhm.
a lot of my videos, I takes me a time, a lot of them for to develop and for me to do them because I want to be sure. But
Right.
if this is truly the old world, right, we got to put everything into context, right? So when we know, based on the work of Anatoly Fomenko, that the chronology they give us today is really not as accurate. The one they
Mhm.
got us living on, it kind of shows that what we think of Rome and Greece like really didn't exist. How they're really telling us who were the real Romans and Greeks. When we talk about true old world in America, and when we know, based on all the mud flood and all that stuff that we're learning right now, the research and how these buildings were actually here, a lot longer than what they're telling us. There was an advanced civilization here. These things look
And
like,
especially in New England, you're from Boston, so I know you
yeah,
know
yeah,
Providence,
exactly,
Hartford, Boston. There's a lot of old buildings like that that are halfway covered on the sides of hills and stuff.
exactly, exactly. I've seen them. I remember now, like if I was over there still, I'd be probably going to film these places. But I remember seeing them, running into them. And yeah, they were. When I see the videos now, and I'm like, yeah, that's exactly what I remember in Boston.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so when we come to the historic part, like how the Iroquois moved, where they originated from, how they were, like you're saying, how they cut off your people for a while. They were always kind of like very aggressive.
Right.
Historians write about them, you know, in a way like they reference the Roman Empire. They even call them, they labeled them the Red Roman Empire or the Red Savages.
Hmm.
They're called the Redcoats. If you actually look at the actual dress of Iroquois and even other, Algonquin tribes, you would see that kind of look that they kind of paint to us about, like the ancient Scottish and Irish people, or like Robin Hood and stuff, and that was
Right.
the same kind of dress. A lot of the Iroquois, if we look at the original, they're wearing, like, if you look at the paintings or drawings of the Romans, um, you'll see that it's the exact same clothes that they had on. The capes and everything, the clothing, like underneath, the toga, the
Yeah,
sandals,
I'm thinking
everything.
about I'm thinking about like the Robin Hood and Peter Pan, like their shoes. They're almost
Yeah,
like
Exactly, the
moccasins.
shoes.
They're almost
Yeah,
like
the shoes.
moccasins.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
shoes, the pointy up a little bit.
I
Sometimes they
think
show the
there's
elsewhere in it, but yeah, that's what
well,
I'm.
you can't really
Yeah.
see here, but
Okay. Well, he
yeah.
got yeah, but if you look for it, you'll see it. I'm gonna show it in my videos. And then when you like you understand who the Edomians are, how they moved, who they allied with, who were they against, why they were against certain other tribes, fighting with other tribes, and there's a big correlation, believe it or not. And this
Mhm.
is not personal. This is not to make anybody the enemy or anything like that.
Right,
It's
right.
just history, and it's just there's a deeper understanding to everything. The Iroquois, just the way they move, you guys will see. There is a historical uh reference to them and who they were anciently, compared to the fake Romans that they gave us. And like you said, all these buildings were here. They're looking like ancient Greece, ancient Rome. They took all these buildings down, and yeah, it's a deep subject that I'm gonna get
Yeah,
into.
to add to that a little bit, I just thought of something that I never really connected them together until now, and that's um, learning about, because obviously in our school system you have to learn, like I know we had to learn take a year of Latin or learn something about Latin and the Romans and how they had white togas and they would wear a purple sash, and that's actually something I wanted to talk about because wampum in New England is from the clamshell, and the purple in it was actually what we made belts out of. So the hat that Ninigret has on, or Casa Cinnamon, is actually made out of white and purple wampum beads. So the purple was actually they're so valued because the purple, there's not many things in nature that are that color, like a deep dark purple, besides maybe flowers. So wampum was one of the only things that was purple, and that just reminds me of like the togas, and they were talking about the high class had purple sashes or things like that in the history that we're taught.
Yeah, 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 definitely. That's so it's just trying to dig into each nation and why they had certain beef with certain nations and why they moved a certain way and why other ones didn't.
Mhm.
And you guys will start noticing a pattern, and that's what I'm going to show. And a lot of historical references on that, people like pointing out the similarities a lot, actually. And this has not been told correctly. So, when you get, the Roman hat, the soldier hat, you guys, you know what I'm
Mhm.
talking about?
Mhm.
That's a mohawk cut. That's not a brush or on top of their soul. That's a mohawk cut.
Right, right. Yep.
So,
Yes.
that's it's trust me, it's there. The all the correlations are there.
Like the Trojan helmet with the big mohawk down the middle. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yep.
that's a mohawk cut.
Yep. Yep.
So
Yeah.
like,
So
we're talking about the true old world is here.
it's just more and more correlation every day, especially I know it definitely in your research, but my own research, I start to see it too. Um, and it just makes me think more about, you know, my own where my ancestors are from. So this area in New England, a lot of people like to speculate about things like the Mississippi River or the Grand Canyon and
Yeah.
California. And I like to think about, what was New England? Like what could New England have been? Um, but there's more to learn and try to figure out and piece things together. So
I was gonna share what I was talking about real quick.
go ahead. Let me
Okay.
hit this. There we go.
I'm trying to find the original because these are like made over, most of them. Let me show you. Okay.
Oh, so I actually have a story about those paintings.
There's some older ones where they're actually more, copper colored, and that's
I,
what I was
I know exactly what you're talking about.
yeah. But this is where I want to show people what I'm talking about. Like there's versions of this, the same dark and look like. Hold on, this is a little blurry. You guys can see. There we go. You guys can see the toga and the red coat and the moccasins. Look, like the Robin Hood shoes. And if you look at a picture of when they go to Romans, because you see some of these with swords on. See, I can't find the originals. They hide them really well. I have the link somewhere. Let's see. Oh, this is all future videos, right? Unfortunately, they ain't gonna give it to us today. They're hiding it.
So the war club that I showed earlier
Yeah,
is
he's holding that, right?
actually in the, yeah, but the one I showed is actually in the shape of a saber, like
Mm-hmm.
a sword. And there's historical things of ball-headed war clubs and ones that look like that the English and Europeans thought looked like swords too. So
Yeah.
but so the four Indian kings thing is what I wanted to bring up. It was actually five Indian kings that were brought in front of, I believe it was the English.
Yeah.
Four of them were Iroquois, and one of them was Algonquin. And the story as I know it, I could be wrong here, but the story I've heard from people in my community is that um, their system of government that the U.S. had, the Iroquois liked that system of government because it was similar to theirs, whereas the one Algonquin king, he opposed the government that the U.S. had brought forth because it was different than the Algonquin system of government. Um, and I
Okay.
think that's why you see things like treaties with Iroquois, and you don't hear much about treaties and things like that with the Algonquin in the Northeast.
Yeah. So there that's something to just always point out. Like as when I had a new one, that there was before the Europeans, before there was wars here, there was kind of conflict between nations and tribes, and that existed, and they used that in their favor, right? So they allied with certain tribes that were beefing and warring with other tribes, and that's what made it work. The invasion,
For sure.
like you're saying, some of them making treaties while other tribes are getting slaughtered. Shout out to Drop for Con Drop. Like it's what he's saying, a more and more war. It's been going on forever. You know, before even Europeans got here. You know. But is there anything else that you would like to touch up on? Oh, yeah, actually, I wanted to show people. Let me see. All right, this is my video because you said you have Narragansett. If you haven't seen it, contested places and vanishing Indians, Narragansett, Nipmuc, Hassanamisco, the right to a name. This is the cover. Hold on 1 second. All right, we got the little commercial. 1 second. Okay. So the right to a name, the Narragansett people, Rhode Island officials in the Revolutionary era, Wallace Herndon, University of Toledo. And she says, abstract, just real quick. Drawing on oral tribal history and written town records, we argue that an oppositional relationship existed between Native people and Rhode Island town leaders in the latter half of the 18th century. Authorities viewed Native people most often as the poor of the town, whose life required official management. Further, these officials redesignated Native people as Negro or Black in the written record, preparing the way for tribal extinction. Native people, in contrast, often maintained a sense of their identity, understood that local governments sometimes conflicted with their own best interests, and maneuvered around the system to their own advantage. All right, so unfortunately, a lot of people had to be misclassified and they had to kind of like take on the whole colored Negro and Black status. Do you have these
Mhm.
stories in your family?
Yeah, we definitely see them in our genealogy that we've done, to where people were classified as certain things, colored, Negro,
Okay.
etc. My grandfather, my dad's grandfather, um, he's listed as like three different things. He was in World War II, and in a census before the war, he's listed as Indian, I believe. And then when he signed up for the war, when he was there, he was listed as something else like Negro. and then after he's listed as mulatto or something like that. So I see it, definitely see it in my own family.
Okay. Yeah, so definitely, paper genocide is real. It did exist. It's history. People, a lot of people talk without understanding what, these presentations are about. It's not about trying to make everybody so-called black. That's what you see from the cover. I know you haven't watched the videos when you say things like that, because you're not looking over the information, what we're showing. If the primary source is saying that, then that's what it is. You can't dispute that. And if you have a problem with the world being a lot more colorful in the past, then maybe you got to check yourself. It's just what it is. What it is. What we're finding is what we're finding. And it doesn't mean there wasn't light skin, you know, shades.
Yeah,
That's why. Go ahead.
my fault. I can add to that because in Veritano, so Giovanni de Veritano, he came through New England in the early 1500s, I think the 1520s or 30s, and he actually went to what they believe is Narragansett Bay, and the Narragansett were there, and he says that the natives here were lighter than the natives in the South, and that when they were born, as we know, when people are born, they're usually lighter than their complexion will be as they grow. And he said they were almost born white here, um, before um, they age a little bit. So that's a primary source from Veritano saying that. Now we don't know if that's tampered with or anything, but just shows you how there definitely were different shades and different looking people in this part of the world.
Yeah, definitely. Let me see. I think I found an image here. Here we go. This is one of the images I was talking about.
Mhm.
You can see the screen, right?
That reminds me of that Larcos Museum image.
Yeah, you see he got the sword.
Yep.
Yeah, look at the shoes. Look at the cape. So they want you to picture like some savage Indian, right? And everybody wearing a mohawk. That's Iroquois, but it's not really like that. He got like braids or something coming down. And yeah, so he's dressed, you if you didn't like if you make this person a pale skinned person, you would call him a European. Honestly, like your brain would say European, you wouldn't think Indian.
Right.
But look, he's dressed up, decked out, and he got now. For me, it's a whole different take on when Paul Revere was saying the red coats are coming, because
Mm.
what red coats, So this is all what I'm saying. This I'll actually some more pictures like this of different people. They don't, they just spit that one out, but there's actually a lot more. They're not giving it to us. I had the rest of them. I'll collect them for the video, but that's just one of them. That's one of the originals. Okay. Native American king portrait, it says. All right. So yeah, I appreciate you, coming on. Is there anything else that you would like to like before you leave, kind of like share and just make, let the people know, or anything you like want to promote or anything like that?
One last thing I wanted to put out there that I didn't get to it, and it's not that big of a thing, but um, a lot of people know about powwows. They hear about powwows, which modern times is a gathering that we have. Powwows are
Okay.
actually they're actually like a newer type of thing in the last, I want to say, 300 years, and they were started with spread with Wild West shows, things like that. Um, but powwow is actually a Southern New England Algonquin word, and it means a medicine man. So it had to do with medicine man medicine men, and they would have large gatherings of people at their healing ceremonies and things like that. So they thought it was um, a gathering when really they were talking about the medicine man.
Okay.
The
So that's
last thing oh, my fault. Go ahead.
no, I'm glad you brought that up. So it's like people would criticize, powwows, they don't really understand. Yeah, it has become more like a touristy thing where people can come and see some kind of the culture, but it wasn't always like that.
No.
Can you emphasize, on that?
Yeah, so we have our own. Um, ceremonies and celebrations and things like that that we do on our reservation that aren't just our powwow, our big powwow that we have every year in August at harvest time. So we have like a strawberry moon festival that's a family event. We have um, a maple sugar festival, and it's things where we still do sing, we sing songs and do traditional things, but it's not like a public, it's not a show off our culture type thing. It's just things that we've been doing and we continue to do now. So we're actually trying to do more of a harvest type thing like that, because right now our only harvest festival is our powwow, which is a, for lack of a better term, it's a spectacle. People come from all over. It's open to the public, and that was our biggest festival of the year for family. So we're trying to do something more traditional in that sense besides our powwow.
That's pretty awesome, man. Because yeah, a lot of people, criticize it, don't understand. It's kind of like more, and before, it was based on real traditions that the American Indians were doing.
Hmm.
It wasn't just like a spectacle like it is, And no disrespect to what it is now. It's just, at least something, is still alive right now.
Right, right.
Um, but yeah, definitely. Like somebody's asking about the language. Um, do you is the language part only for the tribal people, or can anybody learn it? Or is it?
Um, so right now the language is only for within our tribe, but that's only because we're in a reclamation period. We don't have any fluent speakers. We haven't had fluent speakers for a very long time. We haven't had the luxury like some other tribes that have grandparents who still speak, or they have recordings or things like that. But the English and Dutch took a lot of records of our language, so there's a lot of words that they wrote down. So we have enough words to be able to speak again. It's just, we have to have a program that gets people speaking and things like that. So right now it's just within our community. But I'm sure in the coming years, when we get our program off the ground, it'll be available. Um, but going back to the powwow thing, I also wanted to point out that a lot of people hear powwow music, with the big drum, and they see, 7 to 10 people sitting around a big drum.
Yeah,
That's also that's a more of a Western custom, and it's a more modern thing. Our
yeah.
people here used to sing songs and play a water drum, which is a drum that's only about 6 inches in diameter, is filled with water, and it's got a hide on top. And we would hit it and play our social songs. So I wanted to say that because our social songs actually they have language in them, and they're very old. But they're at a point where we don't know what the words mean. Like the exact meaning of the words, is lost. But we know what the words in the songs are, and if you've been following, you might be able to know. You might put a connection with some of the words because. So I'm not gonna sing it, but I'm gonna just like say them basically. So one of the songs is a round dance song, and it goes hi yo, howie yo, hi hi yo, howie yo, hi. So, and it
Mm.
continues for a few times around. So, um, we don't know what those words mean anymore, but we can make guesses.
Well, hiya, hiya, heya, heya,
Yeah,
hey, man.
exactly.
I can make a very
Hi-yo,
educate. I
hi-yo.
can
So
make I can make a very educated, logical guess on that
right,
one.
right. And
Yeah.
all of our social songs, which are old songs, basically are the same thing. There's another one that it goes you way, ya way, ah hey.
Hmm.
Ya way, ah hey.
Oh
So we
wait.
don't know what they mean, but well, we might know what they mean.
Yeah, and that now when it comes to like you brought up something, before you leave, I just want to so we know, past religions and past, a lot of your people call the praying Indians, and And what like Anu was explaining to me, a lot of his people call praying Indians too, and not because they just took on Christianity like that. It was because literally a lot of the so-called traditions that they were supposedly showing the people here, like, look at the Bible, like, they were like, no, we actually practice that on our own without a
Yep.
Bible. You know,
Yep.
can you speak on that a little bit, or
Yeah.
is
Yeah, I
that?
can. So, this is something that is still going on in our community. Um, there are a lot of young people like me who are trying to get our traditions and things back. A lot of the elders, and no fault of their own, it's just through history, are ingrained in what they've been taught, and a lot of what they've been taught is Christianity, um, you know, things like that. Indian church, which there were a lot of Indian churches, which taught Indians Christianity. Um, so we're trying to get back to our traditional ways. But one of the things that I noticed is in the praying towns. So there were praying towns in Massachusetts.
Yeah,
Um, First of all, they had to do it for survival, right?
yeah,
If you were caught doing any of your traditional things, you could be killed up to a certain point. And also, within some of the praying towns, there was generally a church that was built for praying Indians. A lot of the times, they built traditional structures inside of the churches and were doing their old um, ceremonies and things inside of the church that was built for them, inside of a traditional structure. So they were still, you know, they were basically crypto. They were still doing their old things,
yeah,
trying not to be known.
yeah. All right.
Yep.
So yeah, that's very important people to understand, and people like that's you bring these things up that people really don't talk about, or they just kind of criticize, or don't understand. So I encourage everybody to, like, if you have a question for that you see that you don't that you have confused about or something or disagree with, you could reach out to the people, man. I'm sure they'll
Right.
talk to you. Go to the powwows, get to know them, talk to them
Yeah.
personally.
Sure.
So
Oh, and before I go too, I wanted to, because it's Sunday, I had to bring it up. The football thing I wanted to talk about, because I know you've done a series on sports, indigenous
yeah,
sports. So football is actually, um, actually, you know what? If you don't mind, if I share real quick,
yeah, no problem.
more time.
Yeah, no problem.
So here we go. So I have so this is the Lenape website for their football game, but we have our own version here. But theirs is called, I'm not going to try to butcher the way they say it here. But in this article, they talk about football. So this is like soccer here, where they use their feet. But
Mm-hmm.
if you come down here, this is the Southern New England Algonquin version here, which Roger Williams talks about. Let me find his account.
Yeah, definitely. So, yeah, talking about the ancient sports of America, we know that when it comes to balls and ball courts, that was original to
Right.
America. Sports a lot of the times was to resolve conflict. It was part of the, a better way to, to resolve problems, instead of killing each other all the time. So it's very important. It's actually part of their oral origin stories a lot of the time.
Mhm.
Sports, it's part of the, so it's more than just exercise. It's and more than just a sports activity to the American Indians.
Absolutely. So here's a section here. Football games were also recorded for the Micmac, Abenaki, Maliseet, Massachusetts, and Narragansett. Swanton also says it is apparently a coastal Algonquin game not found in the southeast except among the Creeks.
Yeah.
And Roger Williams, right here, a good example of a brief account by Roger Williams wrote Pasukwakuhuwawak, and I've said this word a bunch of times. That's how I know what it is. Pasukwakuhuwawak, and it means they meet to play football. Now, what's interesting is in the rules, the men played against women And to countervail the superiority of the strength, it was a rule of the game that the men were not allowed to touch the ball with their hands, or they would forfeit the prize. So at each end, there's a goalpost, and there are prizes on the goalposts. Whatever team wins, they get the prizes that people have put up on the goalposts. So if the men would touch the ball with their hands, they forfeited the game, basically. But
Yeah.
the females, they had the privilege of using their hands as well as their feet, and they were allowed to pick up the ball and run with it and throw it as far as their strength and activity would permit. So when a squaw or woman succeeded in getting the
Yeah.
ball, the men were allowed to seize her, whirl her around, and if necessary, throw her on the grass for the purpose of disengaging the ball, taking care not to touch it
Yeah.
except with their
Do,
feet.
do, do you guys understand the first quarterbacks were women? That's supposed to letting you know,
Yeah,
you know. And I when I'm doing my sports video, I'm reading a lot of this. I'm reading how a lot of the times it's the women that play the sport in the town, not even the men in some of the tribes, or they're the spectacles, they're the main. Just like in some cases we got Amazonian warrior women, taking the role, and so it's the same kind of thing. I must assume also in a matrilineal uh type tribe, they had a lot of the women running the sports and stuff and competing just like this. So
mhm.
just you guys to know who the first quarterbacks. All right, you heard it first here.
So yeah, so this
In
this
New
is real
England, the
interesting
city
in New
is,
England, and I think it was Yale or Columbia University that had the first official football team. So I pulled up the Wikipedia page with the history, and it says the sport developed from informal games played in North America during the 19th century. Okay, so apparently the earliest recorded instance of gridiron football was Toronto, so Canada's was November 1861. But we just read from this source, football, the women were picking up and throwing the ball, running it through goalposts like these here, these two
yeah.
goalposts, pre-contact. So it just makes you wonder, where did they get the idea in the 1860s for this game?
Yeah, you already know. Most of the sports we play, when we're talking about Mount Olympus and the Olympians and all that, we already know that was here. So, but I'm glad you guys brought that up. Sorry, you and so people can know. It's just like it's in the culture still. It's just like a lot of the things tell you. It's not just genealogy. It's a lot of things that tell you, lead you. Your spirit tells you who you are. Your nature shows you who you are. You know.
Yes, absolutely.
It was Mount
Stop.
Olympus.
There we go.
Stop the moving island. So we got a lot of active people in the chat. Thanks for tuning
Yeah,
in. Hope you guys enjoyed the presentation. I appreciate the brother Shad coming through
yeah, I
and
appreciate you. Thanks for having me on.
telling us his story. You know, I have this old picture here of the Mashantuket Pequot tribe. Have you seen this one?
I haven't. That's my tribe though.
Yeah, you see
Not
this.
I'm not sure if so this picture actually might be of the New England Algonquin Indian Council
Okay.
and labeled as Mashantucket Pequot, but there are probably some Pequots in there. Pequot, Narragansett, Wampanoags all mixed in.
Yeah, I think I've seen her in the other ones. I think this is a mixture of different tribal people.
Right, because the guy right in the middle in the back with the headdress on,
Yeah,
um,
him. He's
to
Wampanoag, right?
him and to the left too. Yep.
Yeah,
He's
Wampanoag.
Narragansett
Yeah.
and he's Wampanoag. Yep.
Okay, this is the Narragansett one.
Yep. Yep.
And are you related to him?
Oh, I'm forgetting his name right now. Yeah, most likely I'm related to a lot of people out here, no matter what tribe, but I'm not 100% sure and I forget his name. So
Okay. Yeah. Anything else you want to say before we get out of here? Anything you want? Any last words for the people, the community?
no, I just want to say, thanks for having me on. Um, as a little plug for me, I am an indigenous artist, so I make flutes. I make traditional flutes. I make bows. I make pipes and things like that. So um, If anybody is in need of any of those things, of course you can get in contact with me. My Instagram is at air_shad, and I have a flute page on Facebook called Strong Wind Flutes. So
Okay.
definitely
Just
definitely check me out.
all right. Make sure to put, if you can, put it in the chat, the links. And
Yep, yep,
yeah,
yep,
and pass me the links as well so I can put it in the description of the video for everybody to
yep,
have. Yeah.
yep, no problem.
And yeah, and I appreciate again having you on, telling your story. Again, if anybody has, like the history, or I mean, this brother is very thorough with it, very involved. If you guys feel like you can share your story like him, even if it's not all like this, or you're part of the tribe, but you have the genealogy and you have the stories and everything, you like to, a lot of people, uh, it helps a lot of people see, especially if the younger people seeing that this is real, this is actually folks out there. This is not just in books and stuff. Like people criticize, like, oh, people just read books for how they help, and well, if you don't see how it's helping, then you just don't want to see, because again, nobody's competing. It's not about information only, reading books. It's just about knowing certain things that was never told to us. Just bringing awareness to information that was held back or not told to us in the correct way. And this brother's living proof. His genealogy, his history, his people speak. They've went through a lot. His people's gone through a lot, and
Yeah,
he's still here to speak about it. His people are still here to speak about. Luckily they weren't, because their mission was to get the Indian out, paper genocide, slavery, and just label people different things. So it's very important. Him here is a testament of, they can't get rid of you. They can't, and we're still here. We're still here. So, much love and respect, brother. Thanks for coming through.
I
Uh,
appreciate you.
yeah, no problem, man. And,
Katapatush
keeping
in our language. Thank you, Katapatush.
katapa, how is it?
Katapatush.
Ketapa kef.
Tapatush. I'll type it for you. Katapatush.
Ketapa kef. And how do you say you're welcome?
You
Is
don't
it
really say you're welcome. You don't really
okay?
say you're welcome in our language.
Okay. You say pura vida then. We just say pura
Pura
vida,
vida.
man.
Pura
Pura
vida.
vida, man.
Hawa.
Hawaha. Hawa. Yeah. Hey, much love and respect to everybody that tuned in the chat, and anybody that's going to hear this after. Hope you guys enjoyed the information, and make sure to check out those videos we mentioned. Better understand them a little bit more of the info if you want to show it to people, because we're not just talking things we made up today. It's all historical. So yeah, thanks for coming through, brother.
No,
One
thanks for
love.
having me again.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, gets this. Wow.